Computer and live stream. So it'll take me a little while just to get the live stream going. Before you just press the button, now it asks you questions. Mm, Okay, I think that seems to be going all right. Okay. Okay, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever it is you are. I'm with Nakula Das. Now, Nakula Das is a man who has some very interesting information, especially for all you men out there who are listening, young and old, because it's relevant to us all. It's information which I came across 30 years ago and haven't heard about it since until I heard this man speak the other day. And it's like, wow, that's powerful stuff. So, Nakula Das, tell me, what are we talking about?
Yeah, we're talking about the mystery of sex transmutation and
Absolutely.
practices like semen retention and no fap, which are becoming more and more popular amongst men all over the world, and you see men of all different walks of life. But yeah, you're right. It's really cool to meet someone who heard about this 30 years ago. This is ancient knowledge.
Yeah,
That's the thing, right? It's like there's nothing new. I'm not saying anything new. I'm just a parrot repeating what has been said throughout many, many ages, but trying to put it into context for today's time and, the unique challenges and the unique landscape of today's culture. So, yeah, ultimately, though, we're talking about sex transmutation and specifically from a men's perspective, but it's something that women can do as well, even though there are differences. And, I think that everybody should just have a deeper understanding and awareness around sexual energy and our development as humans.
absolutely. No, Napoleon Hill wrote about this in his book, Think and Grow Rich, and he talked about how to transmute the sexual energy to create. And a lot of people don't seem to realize that it's all about the creative force that's naturally within us. We have the yin and the yang, and when you create both of them together, the higher and the lower, and then it's you just rock on. We need to
Oh,
have
yeah,
clarity. Yeah, we need to have clarity of purpose and be able to have a vision of what we want to what it is we want to create. So Nicola,
absolutely.
you were mentioning about um, ejaculation and about
Hmm.
holding in the semen. Now, there's great wisdom out there where who was it? The Taoists talk about he who knows the seed doesn't waste it, and
Yes.
you come across words like that even in the Bible. I'm sure I came across something like that
Oh,
as well. Don't
yes.
be wasting your seed. I think it's something that not everybody understands. What do you mean? Don't waste your seed? Maybe you'd like to talk about that for a little while.
I would love to talk about that. Because that's like the ultimate message for men. Don't waste your seed. And all wisdom traditions around the world talk about this in some way, shape, or form, or allude to it. Some more direct, some it's in the passages. In the Bible specifically, Paul in the book of Galatians speaks about don't waste this energy and don't allow this energy to take over. He writes a whole thing around don't go to the orgies, don't go to the right, type of thing, right? And I actually gave that talk one time in a church. I taught and I used that specific verse one time, and the pastor goes, "Oh, guys, sorry, orgies canceled tonight," as a joke. Right? It was funny. So, anyways, yeah. So my own journey, I guess, is one way to just explain how to talk about it. Is that so? I grew up in internet era culture where pornography is readily available. So young men growing up, pornography is readily available. Some of my oldest student was 70, came through a couple of years ago. I've got guys in their 60s right now, 50s, 40s, doesn't matter. Guys of all walks practicing and learning how to transmute their energy because they recognize how much of their time, their energy, their focus is actually being dedicated to that. And then we talk about from a semen retention, why not waste your seed? Because what the spiritual traditions understood was that the life force is held within the sexual energy. So the life force of a sperm, I saw this article not maybe just a couple weeks ago where it talked about that when the sperm enters into the womb, there's a light that emits, right? and that they can see there's a light, they can measure that there's a light, there's an energy that emits.
Mm,
And so, in one perspective, it's about preserving the souls that are coming, that energy, that spark of the divine that's coming in and giving creativity and giving life. When we think about it, we were all born of a lovemaking act. That's
yeah,
why we're all here, right? And so it's the very core essence of who we are at an energetic level, biological level, and therefore psychological level. And it shapes the way we see the world and our mind. And when men take all of that drive, we have two basic drives. I got to eat, I got to reproduce.
yeah,
First, I got to eat, and then I got to reproduce, right? Is the kind of order. But that's why a man will work for food and for a house and and then he'll reproduce and then he's like, great, it's time to roll over and go to sleep. All right.
good.
It's because it's like that is the base or bodily consciousness of the man's body. And so when we preserve that and we hold that, what it does is it enhances a man's ability to eat and reproduce. And this is like the secret. What they found out about retaining your sexual energy is that when we retain, it increases. We have a testosterone boosts. We keep all of the best nutrients, enzymes, proteins, phosphate, zinc, like a tremendous amount of nutrients, but not amount, but quality. Because what is semen? Semen is concentrated blood. It is refined blood, and it's your body's way of purifying or refining your blood so that when the ejaculation happens, because what is an ejaculation for by nature's purpose or design? It's for creating a baby.
Yeah,
That's what we're disconnected from. We're disconnected from what is nature's purpose for sex. It ain't to get your jollies off.
yeah,
Not the most popular message in the world today.
yeah. And of course, like you said, the other thing with sex, with the sexual act, is that when two people are conscious and create, and again from that energy, is that they bring their consciousness up higher and
Yes.
can reach that state of nirvana.
Yes, so everything in this world is dual, right?
Mm,
So sex energy in itself is an energy, creative power and force, but it's not conscious, meaning it has no discriminatory factor. It can't decide whether to use it for a positive side or for the negative side. Or is it going to, but that each individual has that consciousness within themselves to make that choice, right? We all have that free will to go, how, first of all, do I really understand sex and sexual energy? Not just the physical act of sex, but do
yeah,
I understand its impact as an energy in my development and how I see and perceive the world? And what are the positive sides? It's creative power and force. And that's why men practiced either chastity or celibacy. So either no sex unless within marriage or at least a committed relationship, or no sex at all for men who took on like a monk road, right?
yeah,
For men like myself who are married and in relationship, I still have sex. And so I have non-ejaculatory sex most of the time. And I regulate ejaculation to still keep my energy levels up, to boost testosterone, and to give me what the Sanskrit word is vira,
mm,
potency, strength, right? Because when you have men who are constantly depleting themselves, what men don't consciously realize, as I didn't realize growing up in porn culture and growing up in internet culture, and where that was normalized. It's been normalized now, right? Wasting your seed is normalized, and yet some of the traditions called it like the worst thing, abomination. But that was misunderstood to mean abomination of sex or sex natural, beautiful act and sacred act. And then, like you said, then the positive side is teaching men non-ejaculatory sex and non-ejaculatory orgasms now takes sex and flips it upside down where it doesn't become a depleting lusty act but an expression of love and higher service and consciousness to your partner and through your partner through to the divine,
yeah,
right? Which is super controversial, especially because sex was largely used, in my opinion, as a control mechanism,
Yeah.
distorted that teaching. And we've kind of done one of two narratives in our culture. We have one narrative around sex, which is the hardcore religious narrative, right? Like I grew up in the Catholic system, right? You're
Yeah.
going to hell. And I'm
Absolutely.
sitting right in church going, but she's so hot, right? So my biology and your teaching doesn't match.
Mm.
Then you have another culture that's parallel, that is, there is no sacredness around it. It is for pleasure, and go have as much of it and enjoy as much of it as possible with whoever, anyone, blah blah blah. And that's like modern hookup culture and dating apps and
Yeah.
adult content and so much of this is everywhere. To what I'm presenting is a middle path. Have great lovemaking and intimacy, but bring spiritual consciousness, bring consciousness into it,
Yeah.
bring love back into it, put it back in its rightful place, and then understand its power, dive deeper into sex, understand it from a mental perspective and its power to create and give your thoughts vibration and to open up and stimulate creative thought and idea, which is what Napoleon Hill talked about.
Yeah.
Tapping into infinite intelligence, using the sexual energy, raising it up so that you're attracting thoughts on a higher level, and then having the energy and the focus and the discipline in a world of distractions to be super focused and just boom, laser beam towards your goals. And so that's what I teach my men how to do. So it's men who
Brilliant.
want to excel at something and they recognize I can channel this energy and it's the most powerful energy that I have in force into my goals beyond the physical expression.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't get the energetics of it all and don't realize that when they're having sex willy-nilly, that they're losing part of themselves. It's kind of like they're depleting not just their physicality, but their energetics, their spirituality, and it's soul destroying. I mean, that's one of those words, soul destroying, where it was
Yeah.
actually applicable. You know, people think that maybe it's coming from a religious point of view, but it's not. It's much bigger than that.
Yeah, it's
You know,
actually it's a scientific point of view, but we have to expand the word science
mm,
to including the energetics, to say, and science is coming along to that standing, right, where we recognize, many scientists recognize that this is all energy. What we call matter is just a
yeah,
dense form of energy. So we're talking about principles of energy, magnetism, right? We're talking about universal laws that are taught within every major religion from what I can see, right?
yeah,
I've read the world scriptures. They all, but some of them are more direct about saying, like describing it, and some are very caught up in the allegories and stories. But that makes sense because back then, there would have been a different type of language and culture.
absolutely.
But the principles are timeless. They're with us here and now.
And I suppose with a lot of the energy work has, from years gone by, that people that it was kept as a secret, and it just kept for the sake of few, and they didn't. Again, like I said, sex was used as a control mechanism. So they didn't want to know, they didn't want people to know that the power that they have within them.
Yeah. And the thing is, so there's a potential psychological aspect of a bit of what I'll call, well, it's documented in military documents around psychological warfare, that distorting a nation's a sexuality, distorting that energy. Because what are you distorting? You're distorting the gender. Gender is not the way that we use the word in today. Gender, the original word gender meant rejuvenate, procreate, and generate.
Mm.
So gender meant masculine and feminine to create.
Yeah,
That's gender. And so what happens in a nation, what military documents have this first in World War One, heavily more used in World War Two, and no country's innocent of this. Everybody's doing it. where they would drop, for instance, the Americans dropped, I believe, on the Nazi troops in World War II, pornography images on their troops before they would attack, right? To distract the men, to get them off course.
There was a lot said too about again about going for World War II about dumbing down their sexuality that they had now again, but it was just this theory that was thrown out there, but that they had some chemical that they were able to create that they were able to drop or put into the soldiers, the fighting force that would make them more placid and more, they get rid of their sex drive and just keep them sort of like placid going along, where
Yeah.
they weren't the complete fighting force that they should have been. Whether there was any truth in that now or not, I don't know, but
Well,
it's
yeah, it would go along with the same idea of, I don't know if there's truth in that. It's interesting theory, and it's like, it wouldn't with no proof of anything, right? It wouldn't surprise me though,
mm,
because here's the thing. If you want to make an animal docile, what's the first thing that you do?
yeah,
Boom,
oh, for the ghoulies,
castrate,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's right. They get their vira, their
mm,
potency, their strength, their masculine strength
yeah,
from from it's not just their, yes, the testosterone that's produced, but it's from the energy that's created. This is the energetics of it. It polarizes you into your masculine pole. Now, what happens is if men constantly are depleting themselves, they fall more into their feminine pole. They're not as stable or strong energetically. And because they're not holding the dynamic opposite of gender. So what happens is you need polar opposites for creation to happen. In a nation, you need polar opposites to have good family lives and core family lives and economy. Because what drives men to do anything at a subconscious level
yep.
is a
It's the
is a
sex drive,
potential woman, right?
yeah,
Or a potential sexual encounter at a very
yeah,
base of our psychology,
mm,
right? And so once we understand that and redirect that, and that's what the monks were attempting to do anyways, which is transcend sex desire.
yeah,
Why? Because now your consciousness has no anchor into the physical body. That's why in many spiritual traditions, it's depending how it's presented, but sex is considered sometimes anti-spiritual. It's not, and that's what I'm bringing out is a narrative that's like, no, it's not. It's not. My research and experience tells me that it's not that it's anti-sexual. It's just that sex is an easy way to get off course
yeah.
because it brings your consciousness completely into the body, and therefore you're operating in animal consciousness. So that's why put some parameters around it in marriage and then use that energy. And that's the tantric practices or the alchemy practices, right?
Yeah.
Use that energy and loving intimacy together to regenerate, rejuvenate each other, regenerate and rejuvenate your goals and your vision, and regenerate and rejuvenate your passion within your relationship, right? You keep bonded and healthy in all aspects.
That's it. I think that's the problem with celibacy is that I don't think they understood it enough or they didn't explain it enough, why it was important to have celibacy
Yes,
and what you can achieve by being in that state.
that's right.
Rather than turning them on into pedophiles and uh, sexual migrants and something,
Yeah, totally.
which
That's because we suppressed it. We didn't
exactly.
transmute it.
Yeah,
And that's what I'm talking about. This is sometimes it's misunderstood. Semen retention, telling guys, no, like no, you shouldn't suppress that. I agree. It's not about suppression, it's about healthy expression. And health, first of all, we have to just go into again today's time and culture, healthy expression. And I've done it, so I'm not saying this from a place of like I'm better than you. Look, I'm a young man in this world, right? Well, yeah, I'm 40, but like, I grew up in, in easy access to adult content. And I'm the old generation of the had that generation. So every generation underneath me Like here's a standard age that I hear from most of the guys that I work with specifically that are dealing with adult content addictions. I started around 11, 12, 13 years old watching
Okay.
adult content, hardcore, and therefore masturbating and ejaculating daily or a few times a week, totally depleting themselves in some of their most crucial development stage in their
Mm.
teens. And then this goes on though, because again, I've had guys in their 70s and turn their energy levels around when they're like, oh, yeah. And it's not just, and as you mentioned, it's not just about them retaining it, it's about the energetic practices of what I call alchemizing it, transforming it from a lust into or what the Ayurveda it's called ojas, aura,
Yeah,
spiritual potency and power, energy,
yeah.
raw energy in which you can direct. And that's what Napoleon Hill was talking about, raw energy and motivation and creative power, but now on its higher frequency, which is the mind level. So it becomes a strengthening of your mind, your focus, your potencies.
Of course, the other benefit of that too is the prostate, is keeping the prostate healthy. You
Yes.
know, and also important, especially for men, I suppose, as they start reaching my age, where it's so important to keep your prostate healthy. And
Yeah.
with what you're talking about, you know, it increases it and gives it life force, and people won't have those issues, you know.
So yeah, and there was interesting studies shown around our sexual life and Alzheimer's as well, that people that are still engaged in healthy sex life,
Right.
they tend to actually like their memory and their brain sharpness and everything. And that's because love. Now, what's interesting too about sex is that there's hormonal differences between love making and disconnected sex.
Mm.
Meaning, when there is love and emotion involved, the hormones actually secrete and respond differently. And this is
Yeah,
again, and our energy fields respond differently.
yeah,
So it's about bringing love back into love making, connection, and therefore sacredness around it. Like,
yeah.
hey, I'm not just going to do it with anybody and everybody. And just because you swiped left and I swiped left, let's do right.
Mm.
There's a more of a traditional way of looking at it, approaching at it of like, date before you get married type of thing, right? And married from a spiritual or energetic context is sex. That's
Wow.
why marriages were consummated by sex. You weren't really married until you had sex
Yeah,
because they understood you weren't really bonded.
yeah,
When you engage with lovemaking with someone, you release oxytocin, which is our bonding. It's our feel good. I
yeah.
love you. And that's why we get bonded to someone. And that's another challenge with the modern hookup culture is that you're neurochemically as well as energetically, you are bonding yourself, with all these women on a screen or whatever you're engaged in. And we've just normalized that. And so many people are confused and energetically off center.
Yeah.
Totally scattered.
Absolutely. And like I said, I mean, with the pornography, the amount of pornography that's out there, and the easy access to, I won't say free sex, but the casual sex, that
Yes.
people aren't realizing um the dangers of what it is that they're doing energetically,
Yeah.
spiritually, and emotionally. There's so many downfalls to doing it. And
Yeah.
and it's so important that we do when we're connecting with somebody. We're not just connecting, like I'm speaking to you here now, physically, but I'm also connecting with you from a heart base.
Yes.
And
100%.
my emotions as well is going to you. My attention is going to you. So it's we're connecting more on different levels, on three or four different levels. And when people are copulating, unless they're connecting in all those levels, um, it's just a waste. It's a has
Yeah.
the opposite effect.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And what another thing with ejaculation from an energetics perspective, especially if like if somebody's an energy worker themselves, right? Or is doing that, is that you're taxing your whole nervous system every time you ejaculate. So for men specifically, when we ejaculate, our nerve it rattles our nervous system,
Mm.
right? And that rattling of the nervous system takes time to replenish, right? Think of it like tuning your string,
Yeah,
right? If you're just banging that string, if you're just playing the guitar hard every day, right? Yeah, that string's
it's got
gonna
to
get
last
little,
long.
it's gonna
Yeah,
wear out, right? So here's the correlation to the physical symptoms that we're seeing in mainstream society is high levels of erectile dysfunction and high levels of premature ejaculation in young men,
mm,
20s, 30s,
wow,
taking testosterone boosters like never before
mm,
and turning to the pills. And there is a direct correlation in with their habits, their self-pleasure habits, we'll call it,
mm,
and also with the adult content online. And it's just like it's unfortunate not very many people are talking about it, but it's a huge, huge challenge. And
yeah,
what's interesting from again, I just go because you mentioned like just different scriptures and different spiritual perspectives. It's something that actually unifies spiritual perspectives, right? So Nakula Training Grounds, right, which is it's the name of my company. Um, Officially, we're an interfaith men's ministry, right?
very good.
Yeah, interfaith men's ministry, and the reason why is because I've learned and spent time with all the different major spiritual traditions, as well as studying things like Reiki and energy work and
Hmm.
all kinds of cool stuff. And I've learned so much from them all, and from my perspective, while they have their own nuances and viewpoints and levels of perspective that they're working with, I see that there's some common themes. One, everybody understands there's one consciousness or one field in
Yeah,
which we are all working with. And while we might argue a little bit about like what does it look like and smell like and what does its preferences be or not, I don't know about all that, but we can all agree that there's one field of consciousness we're all operating from, and
yeah,
we approach it very differently and uniquely as well, because we all have a personal relationship with God, or what that we call that one consciousness, God, right? And so I see that everybody's pointing to the same truth of that. And the second thing is what's really interesting is I actually see that they all agree, the major ones anyways, all agree that sex must be harnessed and controlled for the society to flourish and for the
mm,
human being to develop in higher consciousness. They actually all agree on that point too. So I'm hoping one day to be invited to the World Religion Forum, and tell all the heads of religion, here's a thing you all agree on that would be a great message for the world in its relevant time right
mm.
now. In the time of like, Sodom and Gomorrah, but like, 2.0 digital,
Yeah,
digital Sodom and Gomorrah.
absolutely. Well, I don't see any reason why you can't go to the world religions and have a stand there and talk about. I was at two of them there. The last one in Toronto,
Okay,
and there was all manner of religions, let's call it, and would be religions and pseudo religions, and there was it's definitely an eye opener. Where I mean, over here in Ireland, we have what, two, three, maybe four main religions that most people are aware of.
sure.
And when I was there, I think there was like 120 different types of religions, and it's like whoa. And it's interesting to go around to hear all the similarities and the differences, and you can learn so much. But I suppose coming from a Catholic background, I never came across this information through Catholicism, and I think it's
No.
something which it's information which needs to get out there, and especially like you said, young men need to be more aware of it, more aware of their bodies and what they're doing to
And
themselves.
yeah, yeah, young men specifically because they're a little bit more prone to pornography because of the cultural, just again, just being like right here,
Oh,
boom,
there, yeah,
like what do you
yeah,
know, right? Right? It's like that's it, right? And having such access to that kind of content at such a young age, we really have to understand the first of all, there's all kinds of studies of how it damages the brain and how it makes us more addictive as well. So we have very we can speak about it without keeping even on a very like I'll call it mainstream level. We can be
Mm,
speak about it and still win the case that this is not good
yeah,
without bringing any religious scripture or spiritual text into it. I just can't help but bring that stuff into it because that's who I am, right? I'm like,
yeah,
but there is an energetics that you have to understand because the root is in understanding the energetics.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
energetics is science now. It's like this. I think that there was a time in human history potentially where science and spirituality were one thing,
Yeah,
right? The time of alchemy, right? Where it's that they met. And so, my program's called Become a Sexual Alchemist, right? And it's all about alchemizing, bringing in both the physical, scientific perspective as well as the spiritual to understand the energetics of sex and how it's our most powerful force. And the better I've got at this, the better my life has been. I've been able to shape my life, my business, my relationship, my social life, my health, using my sexual energy as the raw driver and then
mm,
focusing it on these very specific areas, which is exactly what Napoleon Hill talked about. But I love Napoleon Hill, but I have to say, he never gave us a blueprint or a formula on how to transmute our energy.
no,
He just talks about it.
yeah.
So,
And I suppose that's it. In a time when that book was written, like I said, I came across a book which came from India and was into the yoga and all that sort of stuff.
mm,
I don't think I've ever seen any book like that on the Western culture. Maybe now they might touch on it a little bit, but definitely 30, 40 years ago, there wasn't anything like that. Not that I'm aware of anyway.
yeah. I
You
think
know,
yeah, I think there's a gentleman named Mantak Chia.
oh
Or
yes, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
Mantak.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I think you were going to say, but Montauk, he brought it. I would say that he largely is responsible, from my understanding, of bringing it at least mainstream, or
yeah,
as mainstream as we can be mainstream, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't. I've kind of resigned myself to going, like, who the mainstream is not interested generally in like hearing any kind of like subject around regulation right now, right? On like again, because the whole culture is like, have at it, right?
yeah.
Um, and
And
so
instant pleasure.
yeah, that's right. It's pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. And what we're saying is actually, and specifically as men, like it is, it's true for both men and women. I think it leans a little harder on men, which is really feeling the need to be needed, and that means having purpose, right? What we can call purpose or
Yeah,
duty, a sense of duty as men, like not just arbitrary purpose, but like very practical in the world. Like I need to hunt, and in today's world, that mean I need to make money or I need to build something. I need to be contributing, and as men, we need to be needed. And that is not a bad thing. It's about understanding how do we derive our value, largely based upon how we can get up and contribute and be of service
yeah,
to others. And when we direct our sexual when we control our sexual energy, first of all, it builds a way better family life because your sexual energy is now geared exactly where it needs to be, right? And it keeps you really bonded in a strong family. And then outside of that, you're using that energy to be of service rather than to chase pleasure.
yeah, yeah. We need to be more mindful of that and to sort of keep everything in control, per se. Is it something that you've always been interested in, or how did you get started?
No, no, yeah. No, it's not like I always say. It's like it's not something I can go to my high school guidance counselor and say, "Is there a semen retention
Yeah,
teaching
yeah.
job there? Can I advocate for regulation of sex?" Um, I got into this because in my own journey, so I read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill,
Mm,
and he talked about sex transmutation. I was like, okay, whatever, no big deal. I don't really understand. But then in my spiritual journeys, so I mentioned I grew up like yourself in the Catholic system. But then I left that and I went on this world tour. I call it, not actually travel the world, but a world tour of religions. Yeah,
Religions,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And I hung out with, the Shambhala Buddhists. And actually, my name Nakula Das is given to me by a Hare Krishna monk,
yeah. Figured
right?
that, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, then
yeah,
I spend time and still spend time, in the Vedic literature of the Hare Krishnas. But I'm Christian. I also attend a Baptist church. And then I spend time Thursday evenings with the Taoists doing Tai Chi and learning energy practices and health and wellness and
brilliant.
Ayurveda and then Reiki people and all that kind of stuff. So this has been my journey and I'm still loving because I just love it, right? And I just love this exploring this world and from an energetics perspective. And then in my own practices and my own, development, this concept kept coming up. Sexual transmutation, semen retention, how important this is. And all the wisdom traditions have it like this is it, like this is the gold, right? And then even, how some folks have presented the idea of how some of this teachings is hidden in Christianity and there, but it's a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more.
Yeah,
It's hidden kind of in the story,
yeah,
and definitely, again, like if you read Paul's letters to the Galatians, I think it's chapter 13 or something like this. He's got a direct thing on the difference between lust and the spirit. It's called, the verse is called "Let's Walk in the Spirit," or yeah, walking in spirit or led by spirit. And he directly talks about sexual immorality and the depletion of that energy versus somebody who doesn't, and the qualities that they develop within themselves.
yeah. I,
Um,
I think that whole bit about energy is it goes over the head of a lot of people, and they don't sort of
yeah.
connect the dots, you know?
Yeah, well, I think we're just trained that way. We live in our definition of science, unfortunately, has been hijacked and dumbed down to the periodic table. Um, and but the ancients used to look at energy as just the natural makeup. And I
Yeah,
think I think modern science is recycling. I think we're coming back into that age of recognizing it's all energy,
yeah,
and
absolutely. There is no
that's
difference.
there
Yeah,
is no difference. Yeah, where
yeah,
our differences are on is all superficial at the
yeah,
level of matter, which is impermanent. But the permanency is it's all energy which can't be destroyed or created.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we're recycling, reincarnating, we're being born again, both figuratively but also literally. And sexual energy is a rejuvenation. It's a born again energy. That's some, who knows this as well? People like who they go through some period of their life and then they feel like they need to detox a bit, whether from like a relationship or a time period maybe where they were partying a lot or whatever. And then they
yeah,
generally go, I'm going to do celibacy for a while.
yeah.
We kind of all inherently know it, right? But we just lose touch with it. And who also knows the power of this? Athletes.
Yeah, I'd expect so, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that was one piece of advice that boxers were always given, not
Yeah,
to have sex the week
absolutely.
before your any
Yeah.
fights. Yeah,
David Hay, heavyweight, British heavyweight champion of the world. He, 6 weeks, part of his regiment, no ejaculation,
yeah,
6 weeks. Muhammad Ali, when he was asked, what makes you the greatest? And he says, I avoid the girls and the parties and I'm in bed by 9 p.m.
yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a
So
lot
many,
to
so
it.
many. And then business leaders as well as spiritual leaders all would practice some form of control there.
Yeah. Lakula, we could talk about this all night.
Probably, yeah.
Unfortunately, we keep it tight for our listeners. So
Yep.
you can put your links then on after recording, you can put your links down underneath so people can get in touch with you.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
everybody, especially all those young men out there, I'd encourage you to reach out to Nakula because it's definitely great information. And we've just skimmed the surface of it. There's so much more to it, and Nakula is the man to talk to about it. So thank you for your viewing, and don't forget to reach out to Nakula. Thank you, and thank you,